So it is great to live in Massachusetts and be part of this industry. If you want to be part of this industry, this is the place to be, and I think Bob is one of the premier advocates for this industry, just does an incredible job, not just here in Massachusetts, but for all of us nationally, and I think increasingly internationally. He referenced cystic fibrosis. That was an experience that certainly shaped how I thought about the industry. First half of my career was as a clinical academic, but coming to industry and being able to work on that cystic fibrosis program back in 1994, the gene had just been cloned in 1989. Everybody thought that that was going to be the first cure, and you learn a lot of things in that moment. One of the things you learn about, of course, is the science, the potential, and the high risk challenges of development. And as we all know, that moment passed. We weren't successful. We didn't cure cystic fibrosis, but we did learn an enormous amount about gene therapy, and that's a platform from which many other diseases invariably, I think, are going to be cured. We also learned a lot about cystic fibrosis, and you see the advances now that are beginning to happen, and they stem, undoubtedly from a lot of the work that was done on a slightly unrelated program focused on gene therapy. So the potential of this industry is just enormous. And the other thing you take away from an experience like that is the hope that was surrounding that moment by a community that just was so incredibly focused and came together in such a powerful way with the belief that this disease could be cured. And then, of course, the letdown when it didn't quite work out. But again, you exit that moment with an appreciation for what a community can do to solve a problem. So one of my messages today certainly is that development is not a solo sport, and we all need to be thinking about how you put pieces together in a way that allows you to create value. So what I thought I'd talk about, I think I have 15 minutes. Karen told me as I came in, it wasn't clear, sort of an hour, 5 minutes, somewhere in between. So we'll talk until someone drags me off the stage. But Genzyme has had a unique trajectory here, 30-year history, and over that 30-year history we've done countless deals. I don't know how many deals, but many, many deals with academia, many deals with small biotech, joint ventures, acquisitions, all the way through to being acquired by a large major pharmaceutical company. So in many ways, I think we do represent the life cycle of partnering. And we're now back, and we're back and actively as Genzyme and Sanofi company looking for things that we can acquire, partner, team up with to create value. So I thought I'd just reflect a little bit on what we've learned and how maybe that'll help us as a community do this better, because we certainly need to learn from what worked and what didn't work. So I'll tell you right now, I'm not going to tell you anything new. Everything I said, I'm sure you've heard many times before. Just highlight 3 things in the course of this talk. Maybe one is it's not enough just to do the deal. Anyway, the deal's the easy part. It's like marriage. It's easy to get married. The challenge is to stay married. And what is it about the deal, about the way it's structured, that allows you to ensure that in fact will happen. Second is, it is all about value creation. And value is increasingly defined by, it's always been about patients, it's increasingly defined by access to that patient's. The patient's ability to access a therapy that makes a difference is the end game. And that's how you define value. And if we're doing anything, if we're putting anything together that doesn't achieve that goal, then we're going to fail. So those 3 things, as I said, have very much shaped how I think about this. The context is important. The context changed. We live in a dynamic, evolving world. Our industry is evolving, but of course the landscape in which we're working is changing rapidly. We know the numbers. These healthcare systems are under enormous pressure, and it's one of those things that as you go through, you read about it, and of course intellectually you acknowledge it, but your reality kind of doesn't change. But this pressure is rapidly moving from that moment of, this is where it's going to have to go, to this is where it's going, to this is where it is. And you look at the U.S. healthcare system, of course, with $2.5 trillion being spent on healthcare, $300 billion of that being on drugs, or biopharmaceuticals, which is an interesting cut of that, because at one level those of us in the industry, are a focal point for a lot of the challenges, a lightning rod for perhaps problems in the system, but we are such a small fraction, 10 to 15% of the total spend, and we are not what is driving overall healthcare costs. And in fact, if anything, we should be part of the solution, not part of the problem. So how do we as an industry help people think about that in the context of a world, like I said, which is being forced to make more and more difficult decisions? So the US is starting to make difficult decisions. Outside the US, we've all known about the UK and NICE and that evaluation process where you get the drug approved, but then you go through the NICE process and they say that in fact your drug isn't cost effective, doesn't create the value that's necessary to be reimbursed, and so patients can't have access. That process is moving globally. And much of Europe, in some form or the other, is trying to adopt a NICE-like process. Germany is highly active at the current moment, and drugs are being denied reasonable reimbursement in Germany and are choosing not to launch. So the idea that you would have a drug that was approved and would purposely not enter a market because the system says that it doesn't create the value, that is our new reality, and that is here. Is here today. I had a interesting meeting a week or two ago at BIO, our national trade organization, and had a speaker in, Reed Tuxson. Reed is the Chief Medical Officer for United Healthcare. They are the largest insurer in the US, 75 million lives. I didn't know Reed. He's a highly charismatic, highly effective speaker, and he talked to us for about half an hour, and he had one message, eloquently presented, not a surprise, but I have to say the gravity of it was sobering. Cost. It's all about cost, cost, cost. And Reed is a physician, spent time in the inner city, humanitarian. You could just feel it. His goal is to get patients the treatment they need. The world that he lives in, the customers that he is serving, which is the employer base, are saying, I cannot afford to provide every therapy to every employee in my company. I need basic, healthcare provided. I need to make sure that if we pay for something, it makes a difference. And as he said, using kind of a random example, if you come to me with a hip improvement or whatever, and you tell me I got 3 degrees of increased mobility, I'm not interested. I need 7. Now 3 may have gotten you approved, it doesn't get you access. And I think that is the cold reality of the world that we're living in now. So when we think about putting deals together, trying to figure out where you want to put your dollars and the like, there is one measure, and that measure is, are we creating value? And value is a measure of, can we create something that will be accessed at the end of the day by a patient, not approved, will actually get to a patient reimbursed, patient access. So those are, that's the context. This concept of value is something we all struggle with, and what is it? And I think the congratulations of Fierce 15, I think that category has it exactly right. Value, we recognize it when we see it. And again, it's not about approval. Approval has different measures. One of the things Reed said is, I don't care about your placebo-controlled trial. I want to know how your drug compares to the best thing that I have today. And that's the question that is being asked in virtually every reimbursement discussion around the globe. Latin America, Japan, across Europe. It's the right question. We can't sit here and say, gee, I wish they'd ask a different question. I went through, I got the drug approved, isn't that enough? No, it's not enough, and it can't be enough. We can't be in the position of trying to sell something, position something that is not measurably better than what they have today at a lesser cost. So value creation, unmet medical needs. The first place we think, I know you all think, I'm sure, is what is the unmet medical need? It doesn't start with the question of does something work. It doesn't start with the question of can you get it approved. It starts with what is the need. And if you don't understand the need well, then you're not going to solve the access problem. So really understanding the need, and this is where, again, working closely with patient communities is extremely important, extremely useful. We can't be in our ivory tower saying, we understand exactly the biology here, and this is going to be great, and we're just going to show you why you need it. Healthcare doesn't work that way. Healthcare is all about the individual and their need, the disease that they have, how it affects them, and then what that intervention can do to improve their quality of life, their ability to live longer. So it's not hard to recognize it necessarily, it's not hard to think about it, but it is extremely challenging to create value. We have to be highly focused on that concept of creating value. And when you think about partnering, what works in partnering, and my comment about it's not enough just to do the deal, how do you stay married? In my experience, our experience, often you have large and small, you have parties who aren't necessarily obvious partners coming together, but they come together because there's an idea, and they should come together for one reason only, which is by putting the two together, we can create more value. And you should hold on to something only as long as you can create value, and if you're no longer creating value, then stop or get rid of it. And if you stay focused and you partner things to which you can add value, you can create value, you will stay aligned. And where I had the personal experience of things beginning to diverge is where there's no longer a strong sense that we're creating value and it becomes about the money. As soon as it becomes about the money, of course, then your own perspective and win-lose and the things really begin to fall apart. But if you're solving a true unmet medical need and you've got a patient at the end of the line there that's getting better because of what you're doing together, all of the little tensions that reside in these relationships that determine whether value will be created, they evaporate. Because it's easy to get aligned and behind this idea that together we're doing something special that makes a difference. So I think those two things, value, access, are my takeaways from our 30-year history, and more importantly, I think the past year of watching this industry and thinking about where it's going to go. Rare diseases, just to give you an example, Genzyme is a company that was founded on a rare disease and has focused on a number of rare diseases over our 30-year history. And I look at the world, there's enormous interest in rare diseases, and like I said, I'll use it as an example. Why are people so focused on rare diseases? And there's maybe two big buckets. One is there's 6,800 rare diseases out there, of which only 200 to 300 have a therapy today, and there's just enormous unmet medical need. And that driver, that should pull us all into rare diseases, because if we can begin to solve those problems meaningfully, the world will be a different place. I mean, it's like I said, just an enormous opportunity. The other reason people may be coming into rare diseases is they go, wow, that looks easy. It's kind of hard over here in Alzheimer's and diabetes or what, but rare diseases, that looks easy because you have a small number of people and the trials aren't so big, and you get your drug approved and you charge a lot of money, and that's easy. The reality is there's nothing easy out there. And it's not about small or large. The challenge of getting access for a rare disease is every bit as difficult as getting access for some of these other ones. The rules are exactly the same. You have to show that you've addressed a real unmet medical need, that you have made that patient measurably better than whatever existence they have today. And their current treatment may be doing nothing, but there's no natural history data. There's no, again, having to create the evidence that says, in fact, you've made that patient better when there's very few individuals out there in the world. And of course, access, explaining to people that if you're going to have a therapy for a rare disease, it's going to cost you more than it does for a disease that treats millions of people, for the sheer fact that the cost of development, the time to development, the 10 to 15 years is the same. I can give you examples, and the cost of development is not different. The $500 billion kinds of costs that we talk about as an industry to bring a drug to development is not different. And then you have to spread those costs over a tiny population. The definition of an orphan drug in the United States is fewer than 200,000 individuals. The total number of individuals treated with Gaucher disease, a product has been available for 20 plus years, is on the order of 5,000 to 6,000. If there were 100,000 patients with Gaucher, then of course the cost of that therapy would be proportionally less, and it would still be an orphan disease. So the concepts of rarity and the challenges around rarity are quite unique. So my simple message there is that we have to be careful about herd mentality and why we're sort of running in one direction or another, and how well do we really understand the paradigm into which we're moving. And how well do we think we can add value? Because if we're going there because we think it's easy and we have no ability to add value to that question, we're going to fail. If you're going there because you think you can really add value, you've got a way of approaching one of those 6,800 diseases that has no, fantastic. So I'll just finish by saying, as Karen said when I came over, don't be negative, don't be negative. I am not negative. I think the future of this industry is incredible, right? The science has been is better than it's ever been. The need, of course, is as great as it's ever been. And healthcare, it's the most personal, valuable thing. And we're spending 18% of GDP in the United States. We'll spend more. The willingness to spend on health at one level is unlimited, right? Because we value it more than anything else. On the other hand, the practical ability of a system to do that, isn't there. So our ability to be part of that solution, to make this more affordable, to be able to produce medications and therapies that transform lives and reduce healthcare is the future of this industry. Putting pieces together, as I said, it's not a solo sport. The idea that you can, have a company, a big pharmaceutical company, and spend $5 billion in develop a drug, that's a fallacy, right? We've proven that doesn't work. To be successful, we need to be integrated. We need to be working across boundaries. The announcement that was made in the beginning, 10 big pharmaceutical companies coming together, highly competitive entities that, but their willingness to come together and think about, put that aside for a moment, because if we're spending our $5 billion in a silo, we end up with nothing. We come together, we can create something, and we can share it. I mean, this pie is big and going to get bigger. It's when we think small that it starts to shrink. So with that, I'll stop. I hope you have a great conference, and appreciate having this opportunity to talk.